So one of the things that is important here to mention right here on 199 is this exam tip. Senior management always carries the ultimate responsibility for the organization. It's broken down into executive management, being the Barney big dogs of the organization, like the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, any of the C-level people within the organization. And that kind of goes on till you get to, we start talking about who actually owns the data. But specifically, it is everyone's responsibility for security. And whenever we start to talk about that, it's interesting that I think that people that don't go to security awareness training or whose companies don't put an emphasis on that may not necessarily agree with that it's everybody's responsibility for security. But really, you're only as strong as your weakest link in the organization. And having done enough vulnerability assessments before, having done enough social engineering attacks in the past, I can tell you that if I throw 100 pieces of mud up against the wall, one of them is going to stick. And what does that mean? The metaphor, well, if I call 100 people and try a social engineering attack against them, somebody's going to let me take control of their machine remotely, or somebody's going to give me their password, or something that I want from them just through a little either Southern Charm or whatever. I'm going to be able to get that information. So keep that in mind. And what it comes down to is the onus still comes on executive leadership for being able to provide the necessary training and awareness to the organization to make sure that compromises and threats are properly mitigated and that your system does not get compromised. So it's quite interesting to take it from that perspective. So you have people like you, the subject matter experts, security professionals that give advice or make sound advice to executive leadership. And then from that, executive leadership can put money into different projects or programs. And it's always good rule of thumb that whenever you're taking the exam, make sure that you're having management support. If you don't have management support, it's likely, very, very likely, that you will fail. Simply. Without management support, think about times in your career where you've tried to launch something and not got an executive leader or somebody as your sponsor to, maybe help spearhead or help be your champion to a particular project. You could probably do it, but you know what? They have the money, so you probably need the money at some point or another. A couple other key topics that you absolutely will see is this data owner here. This is usually member of management who's in charge of a specific business unit and protection of a specific subset of information. So keep that in mind whenever you're talking about the data owner. On the next page here, 204, the custodian, responsible for maintaining and protecting the data. Usually it's filled by the IT security department. And it goes on to tell you a little bit about that. You guys can go read that a little bit later. Goes down to the user. We just talked about the user. Really the weakest link in your organization, the idiots, the ID10T. If you're not familiar with that joke, these are the ID10T in your organization. So that is going to be where your weakest link is going to be the users. So it's important that you put controls in place to keep the honest person honest. And that's where we get into the security roles and responsibilities. And then finally here, it's the auditor. It's kind of like what old Ronald Reagan used to say, we trust you, but we're going to go ahead and verify. Trust and verify approach where, hey, you know what? It's kind of like when I go and do an ACA event for the Army. I'll come out and do either a pre-assessment or assessment of a system. And you wouldn't believe, maybe you would believe, all the fluff that people try to throw at you to try to cover up warts that they know that they have on their network or with their program or with their project. They try to overwhelm you by telling you everything's peachy keen or cookies and cream, and really it's they have a significant deficit in a whole bunch of different things. And so we put controls in place to keep the honest person honest. And with an auditor perspective, we trust but verify. Even though something and somebody may be telling you that, hey, we've done everything, we have all the documentation in place, we have all the backups in place, we're doing this, that, or the other thing, show me, show me, show me, show me, show me. And that is super important when you're trying to make sure that if you're signing your name off on the audit, or if you're signing your name off on the validation, that, hey, you know what, I've done my due diligence to make sure that this system is as secure as possible, and I'm going to go ahead and put my name on the dotted line.